everybody and welcome. In today's video, I would like to try making a zero waste pattern, and zero waste patterns have been on my radar for a few years now, and I've always wanted to try one because the idea of cutting out and making a garment with no fabric waste whatsoever is really intriguing, and especially the idea that all of the pieces fit together sort of like a puzzle and that you're drafting yourself the pattern based on your measurements in a way based on guidelines that are given to you is just really interesting, and so I'd like to try it. And I have picked out a project that I think will be both something that fits into my wardrobe and something that I will wear and the sort of shape that I really love wearing, but also be on the easier side and a little bit more low stakes, because I think that these very quickly become kind of complicated and difficult. But before we begin, I wanted to say thank you because I recently posted a video about the difficulties that I'm going through right now in my life, and I won't get into the details here and now, but I received such an outpouring of kind and supportive comments and messages, and I was just blown away by the generosity and support sent by this community to me, and oh my goodness, it was just heartwarming, and it has really boosted me in my confidence and shown me that this community is very important, that we have community here, and it has given me the motivation to continue and be creative during this difficult period. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. So the project I will be working on is an A-line midi-length elasticated waist skirt, and it is from this book of patterns, Zero Waste Patterns by Birgitte Helmersson, who is a Swedish-Australian author and pattern maker based in Malmö, Sweden. I think she has a studio there, and you can both purchase clothes that are no waste, and also I think her website proposes no waste patterns as well, or zero waste. And the concept of this book, which was published in 2023 by Quadrille Publishing, which is an imprint of Hardy Grant, is 5 basic blocks and then variations on those blocks. So let me show you. So you start off with 5 basic blocks ranging from shirts to t-shirts, tank tops, trousers, skirts, and then that's it. And then you have 15 variations of these blocks. So for example, you have this wrap top, which I think is a variation of the shirt or the t-shirt. Or this play suit, for example, which is a variation on the tank top and the trousers together. And I just absolutely love the natural fiber, natural color sort of theme and minimalist theme of this, of the patterns and this book's style. And I find that the patterns themselves are somewhat boxy, but also a bit more feminine, and it has a lot of really interesting fabric scrap usage ideas as well, and it's just a really interesting book. So the project that I will be making is the triangle skirt. It's this one, and what I like about it is that it has a midi length, it has inseam pockets, an elasticated waistband, and side slits, and I think that it's going to be relatively easy to do. So basically, this is the pattern, so you trace it yourself onto the fabric based on your measurements, and then cut it out so that there's no waste. And I think that the concept is really interesting. I think that the length or width of my fabric works. Let me show you the fabric in just a moment, but full disclaimer, I did receive this book for free. This video is not sponsored in any way by the author or the publisher or anyone, but I did receive this for free through work. So the French publisher that I used to work for, because, hello, my name is Sarah, I am a Franco-American and I live in Paris, France, and I used to work in publishing. The French publisher I used to work for received a few of these copies of the original edition to study whether or not we would want to translate and publish this book in French on our market. And once that decision-making process was finished, I was able to take one of the original copies home with me. So one of the perks of working in publishing, I got this for free. But yeah, so I'm excited to try this project, and the fabric I will be making this project in is actually, and I think unconsciously, not a conscious decision, but almost exactly the same fabric as in these sample photos in the book of the skirt. This is, well, I think theirs is made of a viscose and wool blend. This is a 100% linen fabric that I purchased from Fabric Godmother when I was in London back in March for work. And you can see all of the fabric shopping that I got up to in a video that I'll link here. But I absolutely love purchasing fabric from Fabric Godmother. I find that the quality is just always really, really good, and they have really interesting kinds of fabrics there as well. And what I like about this gingham is that it is 100% linen, so it has a certain bounce and slubby quality to it. So the weave is a little bit more open, and it's not as smooth and stiff as gingham cottons, for example, or cotton poplins. And then I like the size of the checks. It's not too big, not too small. And yeah, I think that this black and white check with the gray is just classic and will be really easy to pair with lots of other colors in my wardrobe. So my goal today is to trace out this pattern on the fabric and then cut it out. So I will get to giving this a quick press so that it's nice and flat. I think that the complications will be that I cannot move around the pattern pieces to pattern match. And that might be super frustrating because there is a back seam, and so if this gingham print is not exactly lined up to the grain line, and often the prints aren't exactly lined up, then there's going to be a slight hitch, or it's not going to line up in the back, center back, and then the sides. There's no way I can, manipulate the placement of the check on the sides, but this is meant to be a very casual at home and weekend skirt, so I'm going to try not to be too bothered by the lack of pattern matching. Maybe I'll get very lucky. And yeah, I am excited to get into it. Hello everybody, it is now the next day and I am ready to start sewing. So I have all of the pieces cut out here, and I have the instructions here from the book in front of me. I was thinking of the back seam because I think that it is more important for me that the center back seam, that the pattern matches up there versus the side seams, because I think it'll be more noticeable along the center back seam. And luckily, that seam is along the edge of the fabric, and so that edge for me is the selvage. And yeah, I think that along the selvage, I was able to match the pattern up when I was first smoothing out the fabric before placing the pattern pieces, or drawing out the pattern pieces. So I think that I will be able to match up the pattern of this gingham check along the center back seam. So that'll be a win. Also, I was checking in the book because I thought, they used almost the exact same kind of fabric for these sample photos, and I wanted to see if they managed to pattern match along the side seams, and it looks like no. So if you look here, this is the side seam, and it doesn't look like there's much pattern matching going on. And you know what? I didn't even notice that when I first opened the book and when I was considering this project. I only just thought of it now, so I don't think it's going to be that noticeable or egregious. So I think it'll be okay. But I am excited to get into this project. I'm excited to work with this bouncy, beautiful linen fabric. It just feels so lovely in my hands. So yeah, I'm going to get started sewing now. Okay, so I have finished sewing up the side seams and finishing the seam allowances on the inside. And as you can see, the side seam, the check doesn't match up, but I think that's okay. It's not that noticeable. Now what I'm going to do is, the waistband, because the instructions plan for the hem to be finished now at this step rather than the waistband first, but I'm going to reverse the order of operations because I would prefer to finish the waistband and try it on and test out the length before finishing the hem, because I slightly suspect that the skirt is going to be a little bit too long for my taste, and that way I can just take up the hem a little bit more and fold it under a little bit more without having to trim it off or anything. I think I might, for example, I think it plans for a 2 centimeter hem, double turned 1 centimeter at a time, and I might just turn it up an inch, for example. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Waistband first, and then try it on and figure out the hem length. Hello everybody, it is now the next afternoon, the next day, and yesterday I finished attaching the waistband to this skirt, and I also attached this bias binding, this self-made bias binding out of this viscose fabric from a Donovan skirt that I made years ago and that I absolutely love. This edge isn't sewn down, so I'll have to fix that. But I was thinking about it, and so the center back seam looks like this, and I think that I'd like to modify it a little bit because, as you can see here, there's sort of like a white stripe going down the center back, and it's because this is the selvage edge, or the center back seam is made up of the selvage edge, if I can show you on the inside here. That's what it looks like on the inside. So this is the selvage, and towards the selvage of this fabric, there wasn't the repeat of the gingham check all the way to the edge of the fabric. And so what I think I'll do is, because I don't want to call attention to the center back seam like this, just bring in that seam about 1/2 centimeter on each side, so 1 centimeter total, so that it looks like a regular check. I'm not sure if that's clear. And then it'll blend a little bit more nicely, this seam, into the fabric, because I like it when seams are more subtle than that. And then I do think that it's going to be way too long. It is closer to my ankles than it is to my knees, the length of this skirt. But the thing is, I was looking at the shape of this last night as well, and the shape of this pattern is, so it's kind of diagonal like this, and then it squares off right here. And so it's not a 90-degree angle, but it's still a pretty sharp point right here. And the side slit in the hem goes almost to the top of the point. And so if I shorten it a lot, so that it's just below my knees, then I'm going to lose most of the side slit. And if I move that up, I'm not sure if that will look any better. So I'll have to figure that out when I get to that step, once I finish the waistband. I might keep it longer than originally planned. There's also more volume in this skirt than I originally thought there was. So it is just full of surprises, this pattern. So now I will be re-sewing the center back seam and then finishing the waistband to try it on to see exactly where I want the hem to fall. And let me get right to that. All right, so there are a few hiccups, a few things that I'd like to modify. First, I tried it on and the waistband's a little bit loose. It was slipping down, and so I need to take it in about, I'd say, an inch. And then I'd like to shorten the skirt, so I measured it while I was wearing it to see where I want it to fall. Where did I mark it? Here it is. And I put a pin to pin it up and measure it against my leg, and so let me measure that as well. And so I want to take the skirt in 10 centimeters, and then I put another pin on one of the sides to bring the slit and the side seam up 16 centimeters. So I'm gonna make those changes now. I don't think I'll have to cut any fabric. The hem's just gonna be 10 centimeters deep. So that is somewhat wasteful, but I'll know for next time if I make this again. And yeah, I'm going to make those changes now and hopefully finish. So I have basically finished the skirt, but it is not exactly what I like. I'm not really happy with it. And I think that, as I suspected, the shape of the skirt, so the diagonal seam at the side seams and then the straight sort of, yeah, this shape creates a very strange right angle just below the knees, and I find that it hangs just very, very strangely, and it pokes out at the sides, which is not the effect that I was going for, and so I wouldn't wear it that way. So what I'm thinking of doing is, rather than finishing the project now and then just never wearing the skirt, is modifying it. So resewing the side seams so that the shape is more rectangular and not as, and doesn't poke out sideways. But that means taking in the side seam here, let's see, a lot. So at least 5 to 10 centimeters, like I did the hem here. This is a 5 centimeter hem, twice folded, so 10 centimeters total. And that does mean that there's quite a lot of fabric waste, which is not the point of this book. And then I find that the waistband is really chunky. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's just that this fabric is really bouncy. And I forgot to, so the instructions do recommend putting a line of stitching at the side seam here, just to fix the elastic in place so it doesn't twist around. So I'm going to do that, but then I think I'll also, let me get back up. I think I'll also add 2 lines of stitching across the waistband to kind of flatten it a bit more and keep it better in place so that these gathers don't move around. I think that will help so that there's not too much bulk in some places. So I'll just need to distribute them evenly first. And that's going to take some time, both of these modifications. So I'm going to stop for today because my husband will be home soon and we'll be having dinner soon together. And I will pick this up again tomorrow. So it is now 2 days later, and I've been giving this project some thought because I don't want to scrap it and I want to save it somehow. But the whole zero waste concept of it is not really working out because in the end I'm going to, in order to make it wearable, change the shape and take off some of the volume at the sides. And I was thinking, is this something that I misunderstood when I started this project? And I looked over the book again because I remember when I was cutting out the pieces for this skirt, I thought, that looks like a very hard right angle. And in the end, yeah, it does look very strange on. It looks like I have 2 sort of bent knees on the side of me, especially from behind. It's very pronounced. And so I looked through the book again thinking, like, how did I not see this when I was picking out this project? And I think that the photos don't show this extra volume. And then I was thinking, perhaps it looks different in different sizes. So I know that the size made in the book samples, I think it's a large, and I made a size small. But then I was thinking, well, no, because sure, if you make a smaller size with the same amount of fabric, so the same width that's recommended, 140 centimeters, yes, there will be more volume at the sides, but these parts really stick out whether or not you make a small or a large size. The shape is the same, and I just don't see that working. So then I looked at the line drawing as well, and that's where I discovered, you know what, I think that perhaps it's not intentionally misleading, but it really doesn't represent what the skirt actually looks like made up, because the line drawing shows more of a rectangular shape and it does not show the sort of triangular and hard right angle at the side seams. Or not right angle, but almost. And so I'm going to fix it to make it wearable so that this project isn't completely wasted. And so what I'm going to do is, I don't want to disturb the pockets because I really like how the pockets are designed and how it's integrated into the skirt, and they're really big too, which is cool. Nice and roomy for lots of stuff. So what I'm going to do is, from the bottom of where the pockets attach to the side seams, I'm going to sew a line down and have the side seams there so that it's more rectangular and straight versus diagonal and then this straight line. And that means that there's a good 10 to 15 centimeters of fabric where that bend is that's going to be folded inwards. And this is where the whole concept of zero waste is called into question, because sure, I could avoid cutting off that extra fabric, but if it's folded into the inside of the skirt anyways, that is still wasted fabric. That is still unused pieces of fabric. It's just that I didn't cut it off and throw it away. And this is 100% linen fabric. It is biodegradable. So yeah, it just sort of calls into question, what is the interest of this zero waste concept? Is it to produce less waste? If so, what kind of waste? Of course I can keep the scraps, but I don't do a lot of quilting or little things around the house. I could keep it, but that also calls into question, do you have the space? I do not. And I could find space, but then there's the question of clutter and too many projects and too much taking up your mental space of all of the things that you want to do in your very limited amount of time in your life, which is existential. So there you go. Those are the things I've been asking myself. And although I find the idea of zero waste patterns really interesting, I think that because the pattern pieces have to be a certain way, you have a lot less creative freedom, and it ends up being often very boxy. And so unless that shape works for you and your style, I think that it's just unfortunately not going to work out, at least for me. So I think that because I don't really like that very boxy, oversized style, or I don't like wearing it, it's not my style, it's just not going to work for me. Even the other patterns in this book, I've looked them over. I think maybe the tiered skirt project might tempt me one day. And that one looks like it would turn out the way it looks. Tiered skirts are pretty simple in that way. But I think, for example, the wrap top that really spoke to me, or the jumpsuit, I think it's called, looked really interesting. And I just think, you know what, it's probably not going to look like it looks in the photos already, because I think that the photos are idealized versions of these projects, such as with this skirt, and not entirely true to reality. The line drawings I can't trust anymore either. And yeah, it just seems like because they're so roomy and boxy, I end up using up more fabric than I would in a project where I know exactly what I want to cut out and my size and the shape. So yeah, interesting questions. I won't go on further. I think I've been blathering on, 5-6 minutes now. So I'm going to apply those changes. Then I'm going to add the stitching to the waistband like I talked about 2 days ago, and finish this project and show you. So it's been about 2 hours, and I spent that time unpicking the hem and then resewing the side seam with the intention of redoing the hem. I also took off some extra fabric at the hem and then at the sides, because I didn't want all that bulk in the skirt because this is meant to be a light summer skirt and not too hot and heavy. And in the end, this is just not working. The shape is so strange. My husband even said, and I don't disagree with him, that I look like my bottom half is a hot water bottle. I mean, I can see it. And so, I think it's the very hard angle of that diagonal line in the pattern, and I just don't see how to make this work without drastically changing the shape of the skirt. And so I originally planned on making the Helen's Closet Donovan skirt, if you remember from my summer sewing plans video, out of this fabric, and I think that I have. If I take this skirt apart meticulously, enough fabric to make that skirt. And man, so I've never had such an experience with a pattern before in that it did not work in the slightest. What a disappointment. And I applaud the author for her efforts to create zero waste clothing, and I think that her ready-to-wear clothes are absolutely beautiful. I just don't think that this pattern or these shapes work for me. And so, yeah, I'm going to put this behind me. I won't be showing how I make the Donovan skirt because I think this vlog is already going to be pretty long, but I will show you what I've made out of this fabric so that I can show you how much I didn't waste and how this fabric won't go to waste after all, which, yeah, I really hope I'll make it work. So hopefully see you very soon. For you it'll be a few seconds, for me it'll be probably a few days. Oh gosh. Oh goodness. It is now 3 days later, and I did take some time off from making this skirt because I did feel kind of discouraged. I really, really wanted that zero waste pattern to work out. I think the concept is just so cool, and how satisfying it would have been if I could make a pattern, you know, make a garment with no fabric waste. In the end, I had more fabric waste than even this pile. I kept the biggest scraps, so the ones that were at least 5 centimeters wide, just about, just in case one day I decide to do some patchwork quilting or anything, because I don't have any pieces that are big enough even for a pocket or to make bias binding, but maybe someday I'll find a use for it, and it is really beautiful quality linen fabric, and so I'm sure there'll be something, maybe. But there were other scraps that were much smaller than this that I threw away. Not a whole lot, but still a lot more than I anticipated with this project. So there's that, but in the end, I'm really, really happy with the Donovan skirt, the Helen's Closet Donovan skirt that I made. I made a size 8, a straight size 8. My waist is smaller than my hips, so I think my waist is a size 4 in Helen's Closet patterns, but I just sized the elastic to my waist, which is described in the instructions how to do. So there is a little bit extra volume at the waist for me because I didn't grade in, I just took the elastic in, but I don't think that it is noticeable or that there's too much bulk around the waistband, so I'm happy with it. And then this pattern features side slits for movement, which I find really elegant, a really lovely rectangular shape that I find more contemporary versus vintage, and definitely much more complimentary to my shape than the previous version. My husband was even walking around the house after, making fun of it some more, pretending like he was wearing one of those 18th century French peigné skirts and pretending to turn around to fit through doorways. It's fine, he doesn't mean to make fun of me. I thought it wasn't very complimentary or flattering either, so I'm really glad I was able to pick apart that skirt and reuse the fabric from that skirt to make this one. The only thing I had to recut out of the leftover fabric that I had from the previous version of the skirt were the pockets, because the pockets from the previous skirt didn't fit into this skirt the same way, and there wasn't enough fabric to make them, because this skirt features pretty big pockets too, which I love. And I just absolutely love the slash pocket that's integrated in the Donovan skirt. It is my favorite kind of pocket. I find it really elegant, and it kind of breaks up the monotony of the front panel of such a simple skirt, and I love this pattern. I've actually made it twice in the past week, because I made a previous one in a white linen that I will show you very soon in my Summer Makes wrap-up video, and I just love this pattern. It is classic for me. It's a staple in my wardrobe, and I highly recommend it if you haven't tried it already. So that's it for this video, but if you are interested in this book, I will link it below, and I will link the author's Instagram and website as well in the description below if you'd like to check it out, because there are other patterns in this book that I think that if you like the style and you don't mind more of a boxy style and it suits your body and the way you like to wear your clothes, then I do think that it's a really interesting concept and that perhaps you'd find success in your size and your style. And I just really like the concept and the idea and the effort to create less waste in our sewing practice. And it's something that I will be more mindful of, thinking of the different techniques and fabric reuse ideas that are integrated in this book as well. And so, if you'd like to, I will link this below and you can check it out yourself too. But I am still pretty happy that I tried this out, even if it didn't work out for me. I will retain some of the lessons and keep it in mind for the future. Let me know if you've ever tried a zero waste pattern and if it worked for you, if it didn't, and which designers of zero waste patterns you would recommend, because I'm sure there are more than just this one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again here very soon. Bye-bye.